Dante Boxer Nation.
Every time they get a guy, they build him up, and you know what I do? I go into my mental Rolodex and I just think about certain things like how Oscar gave, you know, you know what? You might as well call me the golden boy, because I done beat everybody on your whole crew. Last time I checked.
Yep, those were the days where we had some real press conferences. Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So you all know by now, Canelo Alvarez, of course, he made excuses for why he lost to Floyd Mayweather. He said that he wasn't in his prime. And if he was in his prime, he said Floyd Mayweather wouldn't have even fought him because he would have knocked out Floyd Mayweather. I'm not making this up. This is what Canelo said. So my question is, Canelo, who was 23 years old, if he couldn't hit a 36-year-old Floyd Mayweather, if we're talking about prime for prime, then how would Canelo Alvarez be able to hit a prime Floyd Mayweather? The same 23-year-old Floyd Mayweather that beat Diego Corrales. This is the guy that Canelo says that he would have knocked out. Canelo has been in the ring with Trout, Gennady Golovkin, Edeslani Lara, Danny Jacobs. Those are like his biggest fights. He didn't knock out any of those guys. So before I continue, let me go ahead and play the clip of what Floyd Mayweather had to say in response to Canelo Alvarez making this excuse. Check it out.
Canelo just said, if you and him were to fight and you were both in your prime, he would win.
Well, it's crazy that, you know, Canelo said that, because when Canelo fought me, he was in his prime. And when I fought, I was an old man, so...
You know, it's crazy because I cannot recall the last time we had a 23-year-old champion who was actually naturally bigger fighting against a smaller fighter who's 36. He was actually closer to 37 than he was to 36. So you have this 23-year-old against this 36, 37-year-old. And the 23-year-old is making excuses for why he could not beat the old man. It makes no sense, because all of us know if the roles were completely reversed and Floyd Mayweather was 23 years old, he was naturally bigger than Canelo Alvarez. Imagine Canelo Alvarez at 36 going on 37. He already moved up 5 weight classes. He's going to fight a Floyd Mayweather who's 15 pounds bigger than him the night of the fight. Canelo fans, be honest in your heart. Who would win that fight? It's not even a question of who would win the fight. We know Floyd will win it. The question is, how long would it go? Because see, guys, you have to remember when you're talking about Floyd, a lot of fans, they talk about the old Floyd. Money Mayweather, the Floyd Mayweather who's in his mid-30s, right? People forget about the fact that the young pretty boy Floyd, he was knocking out the majority of his opponents. He was also knocking out guys with granite chins that had never even been knocked down before, let alone even lost, like Diego Corrales. Diego Corrales had a chin like Margarito. If you don't believe me, you go back and you watch Diego Corrales versus everyone that he fought, from Acelino Freitas, who was one of the hardest punchers in the game at the time. You could also watch Diego Corrales versus Robert Garcia. At this time, when Floyd Mayweather was at 130, Robert Garcia, who's the trainer today, Mikey Garcia's brother, he was one of the champs in that division. He was undefeated. And well, he was doing really good against Diego Corrales for about 6 or 7 rounds, but Diego started to walk him down and then eventually knocked him out. Diego Corrales was so dangerous. At the time he fought Floyd Mayweather, he was considered pound for pound number 7, the best fighter in the world. And this is when it was a real pound for pound list, guys. Now the pound for pound list is so watered down, it's so subjective ever since Floyd Mayweather retired. Now it's more of a popularity contest, at least when it comes to old media. But anyway, I digress. Back to Diego Corrales. So Diego Corrales, not only was he pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world, but there were only two fighters that were considered favorites to beat Floyd Mayweather in Floyd's whole career. That was Diego Corrales and Genaro Hernandez, the very first champion that Floyd Mayweather fought. When he first fought for the title, he only had 17 fights. And the majority of people thought he was going against the lineal champion. This wasn't just some guy who had a belt, some guy that had a vacant belt or whatever. This was the lineal champion. And Floyd had beat him and stopped him with only 17 fights. So when it comes to like big names, when it comes to dangerous opponents and champions, I could name you tons of fighters that Floyd Mayweather stopped. Floyd had stopped guys that were on the pound for pound list. If you look at Canelo Alvarez by way of contrast, Canelo's supposed to be a humongous puncher. But ask yourself, who's the best fighter Canelo Alvarez knocked out? Because it damn sure wasn't Golovkin, and it damn sure wasn't Floyd Mayweather, right? So who's the best fighter he knocked out? Probably the best fighter he knocked out, or at least the one that looked the most impressive, was the knockout over Amir Khan. That's probably his best knockout. Now, once again, you compare that, because I can name tons of Floyd Mayweather's knockouts. All of it, the majority of his knockouts when he was fighting closer to his natural weight, the majority of those knockouts, the opponents were better than any of the guys that Canelo Alvarez knocked out. What Floyd Mayweather did to Corrales is what Canelo was supposed to do to Gennady Golovkin. In fact, that's what he was supposed to do to Floyd Mayweather. You know how people always say Canelo or maybe other fighters, they're waiting until this guy gets old, right? They're waiting until this guy gets old. Well, Gennady Golovkin had been calling out Canelo for about 3 years. And when they finally fought, what did all the fans say? They all said, Canelo, he waited for Golovkin to get old. Do you guys know how old Golovkin was when he fought Canelo? He was 36 years old, the exact same age that Floyd Mayweather was. But nobody is saying that Floyd Mayweather was too old. They'll say that when it comes to Golovkin. When Andrade or Charlo wants to fight Golovkin, you'll hear fans saying stuff like, oh man, Golovkin is old now. In fact, even when it comes to Lomachenko, before Lomachenko lost to Teofimo, a lot of fans were saying he was old. And he's only, I believe, 33? And the real funny thing is when Floyd Mayweather fought Oscar De La Hoya and beat Oscar De La Hoya, people said that he was too old. But the same fans, the same race fans who said that about Oscar are the ones that now are saying that Canelo was too young. Oscar was too old. Canelo was too young. You know how old Oscar was? Oscar was 34. So once again, how can Oscar be too old at 34, but Floyd Mayweather is not too old at 36? We know what time it is, don't we? So when Canelo Alvarez says that he wasn't in his prime, let's put them against each other prime for prime, but not only prime for prime, but let's put Floyd Mayweather in his natural weight class. And this is the Floyd Mayweather Canelo Alvarez said that he would knock out and he would beat him so easy. I don't even think Canelo believes that. I truly believe he was basically saying exactly what he hears a lot of his fans come up to him and say. I know for a fact, if we see the comments on the internet, then clearly a lot of Mexican fans, they come up to Canelo all the time giving him excuses like, forget it, I know you didn't say this, Canelo, but I'm going to tell you, you lost to him because you was only 23. You weren't experienced. You destroy him right now, Canelo. And after Canelo has heard that over 100 or over 1,000 times, now he's regurgitating these same talking points. But it looks worse when Canelo says it, because when Canelo says it, he has a face. People know who he is. When people are on the internet saying this, they're just anonymous. They can say whatever they want because They can't be held accountable for if they contradicted themselves in the past or et cetera, et cetera. But Canelo Alvarez can be held accountable because we know his track record. Look, man, at the end of the day, everyone knows the truth deep down, that Floyd Mayweather was just better than Canelo Alvarez and will always be. If Canelo truly believed that he was better and would beat Floyd Mayweather today, he would have took the Demetrius Andrade and the Jamal Charlo fights in a heartbeat. He would have been anxious to show the boxing world how much better he's become since he lost to Floyd Mayweather. But you can't show people how you've gotten better by fighting Avni Yildirim, Rocky Fielding, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Smith. Just like Floyd Mayweather said in that clip I played at the beginning. They build these guys up and then Floyd Mayweather takes them out. But they build them up, and once Floyd takes them out, then all of a sudden they make excuses for why that guy lost. Let me go ahead and play you guys another clip of what experts were saying before the Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo fight. Check this out.
If Oscar lets his jab go a few more times, he wins the fight. I think Canelo can do better than Oscar did 6 years ago. I don't think Floyd is better than he was 6 years ago. Having said that, I'm still picking Canelo Alvarez to win the fight. I think he does something early to make Floyd feel his power.
Hey, Floyd is 36. He's almost 37 years old when this fight goes on. Canelo has got to make him feel that age.
Nosotros ya sabemos cómo vamos a ganarle a Mayweather. El problema es de Mayweather, cómo le va a ganar.
So in that last clip, you see Canelo's trainer saying, we already know how to beat Floyd Mayweather. Now, when you listen to the other guys, when you hear Smitty, when you hear Kevin Iole of Yahoo Sports, notice Kevin, the main thing he mentioned was Floyd Mayweather's age. He's 36, closer to 37. Canelo has to make him feel that age. That's what he said. Notice, neither one of those guys said anything about Canelo Alvarez being too young. None of them said, I'm just worried about Canelo being 23 and, maybe he's just not ready for this. Maybe he's not in his prime. No, they thought that Canelo Alvarez was more than ready. Hell, Smitty even picked Canelo to win the fight. It was really amazing to me that Canelo Alvarez had the nerve to make this excuse of him not being in his prime while talking to Mike Tyson. He said this on Mike Tyson's show. I know Mike Tyson had to be thinking when he was listening to Canelo say this. Canelo was a unified champion at 23 years old. Mike Tyson had to be sitting there saying to himself, how could you be too young at 23 when I was the heavyweight champion at age 20? And I was the undisputed unified heavyweight champion by the time I was 22. And Canelo is sitting over here talking about if he was in his prime. I mean, when did Canelo Alvarez reach his prime? Was he in his prime when he started to knock out the likes of Amir Khan, the James Kirklands? Is that the prime he's talking about? Or when he beat Rocky Fielding? He looked sensational knocking out Rocky Fielding. Was it when he fought Golovkin the 2 times? That couldn't have been a prime Canelo. Was he in his prime when he fought Lara and the majority of people thought he lost that fight? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. At the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez clearly lost to the better man. And actually, he should be happy that he only got to fight the old, smaller Floyd Mayweather, as opposed to fighting a young prime Mayweather before he jumped up 5 weight classes. That would have not ended well for Canelo Alvarez. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Hello, my name is Dominic. I just got my procedure done here in South Carolinas. I was recommended by Dante's Boxing Nation, and it's real. You know, here's the results. The brother out here, Brother Enoch, is real, and it's a very, very, very good recommendation. I recommend it. 4 hours, you in, you out, and it's the rest of your life.
So if anyone in the world wants this hookup, make sure you contact my man Enoch at 704-499-3471 and make sure to follow him on Instagram.
An important message from Youth Fountain Laboratory, makers of Vasoflux and Vasoflux for Men. If you're over the age of 35 and over the years you've eaten pizza, dairy foods, deli meats, or meats with fat, you are likely to have some degree of plaque buildup in your veins and arteries. This increases your risk of suffering a stroke or heart attack exponentially, and no one wants such a catastrophic event to occur. Introducing Blackout. Blackout is made of all natural ingredients proven to help dissolve clots in the blood, remove calcium deposits and plaque from the walls of veins and arteries, improve viscosity of the blood, improve elasticity of the veins and arteries, treat varicose veins, and prevent the reoccurrence of plaque buildup. For more information, visit Youth Fountain Laboratory at youthfountainlab.com or call 1-800-853-7856. And remember, to help unclog veins and arteries, get the Blackout.
All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Diki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodiki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.